Look, we all know by now that New Glenn blew up on the pad. Massive explosion, the biggest that's ever been seen on the Space Coast. And if that wasn't a big enough reason to worry about them making their rendezvous with the Orion capsule next year on a New Glenn rocket, there is another potentially bigger factor. You see, they're currently operating off of one launch pad. So even if they can get the rocket cleared, even if they can get the hardware rebuilt, even if they can get this new integration tower that they're putting up plans and Dave Limp, the CEO, is posting about, they cannot risk that pad again. New Glenn, the rocket, is going to have to be tested to within an inch of its life in order to make sure that that anomaly doesn't happen again. I want to take you back to Starship Flight 12, the one that got aborted and then flew again the next day. The reason there was an abort was because of protocols were put in place with the rocket so that when it's about to do its launch, anything that seems to be amiss, the system trips and it stops it proceeding. My question is, why was there no warning about the New Glenn explosion? And that's what should worry everyone, Dave Limp included, Jared Isaacman included. It's not so much the fact that the rocket blew up, it's more of a case of it seemed to blow up without any warning. Where were the protocols? Where were the systems that stopped it getting to that point? So let's say they rebuild the pad, which maybe they will by the end of the year. That's what they're claiming. Let's say they can rebuild the rocket. Let's say they can get everything to a state where the pad's rebuilt, the booster's ready to go, get it to the pad for testing. They're going to have to take testing all the way back to the start and prove that thing over and over and over again before Jared Isaacman will allow that rocket to be part of the moon missions. It's just too dangerous if they don't. And is that doable within 12 months? No, I don't think so. And NASA's got a moon-based program to build. They can't sit down indefinitely, waiting for Blue Origin to get their shit together. So the question that's been on everybody's lips, especially over these past few weeks, what is NASA's deadline? Is there a hard deadline on the time that they will allow Blue Origin to get their shit back in order and get New Glenn proven so that it can start flying payloads for NASA? Which is exactly the question that somebody asked at the Moonbase 2 NASA briefing on July the 1st. Now at this briefing, Jared Isaacman was joined by Carlos Garcia Galon, who is the head of NASA's Lunar Surface Development. And Isaacman himself refers to the guy throughout the interview as the Moonbase guy. So that's his name from now on. We will henceforth refer to Carlos Garcia Galon as the Moonbase guy. And it's the Moonbase guy who answers the question that everyone was dying to ask. Take a look.
Payloads, when it's getting out to the pad. And of course, what I know we're all going to be excited for is when we start seeing footage of the launch and landing. So I might turn over to our Moonbase guy. What more specifics do you have?
Moonbase guy.
I'll start with Blue Origin. They're developing the Endurance lander. It's the first version of their Mark 1 lander. It looks like it's almost done. Of course, the launch vehicle for that is the New Glenn, which had an anomaly recently. So we're working with Blue Origin very closely to understand their timelines to recovery and also looking at other options in case, it doesn't meet our timelines.
I think you...
Okay, very important what you just said there. We're working with Blue Origin. We're going to assist them in any way we can, but we're also working with partners in case they cannot meet our deadlines. They're putting deadlines on it. Obviously, on the record, they have to be supportive. They have to tell them, look, don't worry, take your time. But privately, there is a hard limit, and he's about to reveal it.
Eric said, Carlos mentioned other options for Endurance's LV if it doesn't meet our timeline. What's NASA's timeline for the launch?
We've been focused on helping Blue Origin with the determination of the root cause. We will help with building the infrastructure. But then we're also looking at options like, can we fly Mark 1 lander in a different rocket? Or then we will look at other options for the payloads. And
other options if we can't fly it on New Glenn.
So they're making great progress. So plan A is very much still to launch the Mark 1s on New Glenn. And we have time. We've got time beyond that point into 2027. It would be almost irresponsible with the importance of the moon base, how the moon base even sets up for our Artemis astronauts to return to the surface, not to have plan Bs. But I would say plan A was always New Glenn, and plan A is looking a lot better today than it was weeks ago, just based on the progress that the Blue Origin team is making.
So NASA are not saying screw Blue Origin. They're saying we love plan A, but plan B exists. And we're not pretending that it doesn't. And what is plan B? Well, they're not saying it out loud, but there's only one rocket on the planet with the payload capacity that NASA needs.
After the New Glenn incident, has NASA been in talks with Blue Origin to use another vehicle to launch MK1, or are we okay to wait to the end of the year?
So, as the minister said earlier, Plan A is still very much to be able to fly Mark 1 on the New Glenn, and we're monitoring the timeline and the progress there.
Jared Isaacman, he clearly looks a little bit uncomfortable talking about this, and he's leaving it to Moonbase Guy to say the things that he really wants to say, but probably can't through diplomatic relationships with his launch providers. Interesting.
It would not be an impact to the Moonbase development if we even went into 2027, maybe the middle of 2027 for that. So after that, as we see the progress, like we stated before, we'll be evaluating options, including the possibility that we can launch a different launch vehicle. But as the administrator said, we're sticking to Plan A for now.
David Curley of Full Throttle said, Isaacman high praise for Blue and Limp. Is your confidence based on data about the anomaly as well as the behavior of Blue?
Yes to both. We offered. The next morning, Blue Origin, accepted, where we've embedded personnel into the pad recovery effort, into, of course, as part of the anomaly investigation. Not just the moon base, but Blue Origin is a critical player for the Artemis 3 mission, and certainly potential for crewed landings to the moon thereafter. So we are informed. It is based on data. It should very much be Plan A. That we provide all the support we can to get them, going again to support Moonbase and the Artemis missions. As we said, we can afford plenty. If they're committed to getting back before the end of the year, great. It would be an amazing accomplishment if they did. They can go beyond that, and NASA is still fine up until a point. If we start tracking towards mid 2027, that now has implications for the Artemis 3 mission.
You hear what you just said. They've basically got to mid-2027, then it becomes a problem. And more importantly, he's interested only in the lander. He actually had a phrase where he said decoupling. So ultimately, they're saying, look, forget about the rocket. That's on you. Take as long as you need. But if it's not ready by mid-2027, then we're using other launch providers. But we want your lander. Very interesting.
They're contributing to all the ignition priorities to have the ability for NASA to drive outcomes. But I think based on the progress that we've been seeing so far and the great communication from Dave Limp on this one, we don't have any reason to believe that we would have to select an alternative pathway yet.
Very diplomatic. Now, one of the things coming sharply into focus for me is that the players in the whole drama of our next few years building towards the moon and eventually Mars. We've got everything. We've got the hardware. We've got the characters. We've got the canvas being the moon and Mars. So I wanted to introduce a section. It's called Rocket Drama. And in Rocket Drama, we already have a cast of characters, and every character has to have a name. First of all, the main man, Elon Musk. With Elon Musk, you either think he's evil or a genius. So he's both. Evil genius. Second up, we have Jeff Bezos. Somewhere between founding Amazon and buying a super yacht, he also managed to buy a new body. Jeff Bezos. Mr. T. Jared Isaacman, the newish NASA administrator, Elon's guy, former astronaut, Polaris Dawn guy, and the man that Evil Genius and Mr. T are doing their very best to woo, like an old Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Issue is or issue ain't my baby.
Jarhead. Now, first of all, Jarhead is a play on Jared. Second, have a look at his head. And third, a jarhead is slang for a US Marine, which for a man who flew in space and now runs NASA and got the job via a phone call from Evil Genius, I'd say that fits. Jarhead. Then, of course, we've got the Moonbase guy, Carlos Garcia Galon. Jarhead's word for him, not mine. I'm taking it. Right, so Evil Genius built the only rocket that Jarhead needs right now, and Mr. T blew up his only launch pad. And Jarhead, personally recruited by the Evil Genius and the $50 million SpaceX contract through the Polaris program, publicly insists that they're not good friends. We've never been photographed anywhere together, he said. Not that they're not good friends, they've just never been photographed together. And I quote, "No pictures of us at dinner, at a bar, on an airplane, or on a yacht. Because they don't exist." Pictures, that is. Not yachts, bars, airplanes, and boats. Look, whether they're friends or not, I'll leave that to you. But the NASA administrator is the man now deciding whether Mr. T gets another chance. And Starship is the contingency plan. It looks like Evil Genius is way ahead in this race, but can Mr. T fight back? And for the record, yes, I'm a SpaceX fanboy, but I also want Blue Origin to do great things. The more competition, the better. So come on, Mr. T, what do you got? Let's see you fight back. But there's no avoiding the truth. The evil genius is on the cusp of inheriting the moon.